All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College World podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be breaking down an SEC West showdown between LSU and Ole Miss, ranked contest going down in Oxford, Vaught Hemingway Stadium. 2.5-point line in favor of the Tigers. 66 is the total. Special start time, 6 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. Looking at this LSU offense, Nick, it's certainly been an interesting start to the season for LSU. They collapsed against Florida State in that second half in a game that was very evenly tight-knit, close. Then we ended the day with 459 yards. Like 80 of those came on a final play from Brian Thomas that really boosted that, total. So they weren't all that great against FSU. They really couldn't run the ball that much. They were not very good in short yardage either. They ran it up on Grambling. Miss State, they were like 7 to 10-point favorites in that game. And they absolutely blew them out of the water, 530 yards. Jane Daniels the last 2 weeks has showcased tremendous efficiency throwing the football. 72% comp rate this year, 12 touchdowns, 2 picks. 193 rushing and 2 scores. Only found the 36 yards rushing this past contest against Arkansas. They were able to keep him in the pocket for the most part. They certainly want to expose his legs a little bit more, though, throughout the season. Jaden Daniels has been terrific, and the biggest part for that is the emergence of this duo of Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. These guys are completely lighting up the stat sheet, especially the last 2 weeks. Thomas, 413 yards, 523 for Neighbors, 5 touchdowns each. This LSU passing attack, Nick, looks to be a lot better than we initially anticipated. What do you make of Jaden Daniels' play this far?
You can certainly say that Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in SEC. That's not a crazy thing to say. He is having such a great season and has really taken over and found himself in a good position in the SEC. I think he is the best quarterback in the conference right now. 90 of 124, 72% completion percentage, 1,300 yards passing, just about 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, plus the 200 yards in a little under 200 yards on the ground and 2 scores for him rushing. I think he's stepped up. He's in the pocket. He's comfortable. He's the quarterback we thought he was going to be. He's really developing. This passing attack is a lot better than we thought it was going to be. Neighbors and Brian Thomas have both over 400 yards. Neighbor has 523. Thomas is 413. They both have 5 touchdowns each. This passing attack is very dominant so far. They've really found themselves in a good position here. They're putting up a ton of yards every single game. They have a good high-flying passing attack, which could certainly be an advantage against a secondary for Ole Miss that has looked very weak so far this season.
Yeah, the Tigers' offensive line, I think, has been a big help for this passing attack, especially on the interior. Garrett Dellinger, Charles Turner's having an above-average season. Miles Frazier's been really good in pass protection. Will Campbell, he certainly has had more struggles than anticipated here. But on the flip side, the other sophomore, Emory Jones, he's progressing very well after a very poor season last fall. So I'm very happy with what this LSU offensive line's been able to do here, going against a talented Ole Miss front. And, the rushing attack has certainly, provided adequate balance. They had 189 yards rushing against Arkansas, and that doesn't include Jaden Daniels' legs. Last year, he was the leading rusher for him. Again, only 36 for him. Logan Diggs, the transfer from Notre Dame, he was able to be very consistent, 14 carries for 97 yards. He's been able to provide a nice spark here for them running the football. I think this is one of the deeper running back rooms in America. You got Josh Williams, Noah Kane, John Emery, whoever they want to throw out there. Only really Diggs and Williams, though, have been the runners so far, the main guys in the backfield. So I think this is a very interesting LSU running game, putting up 191 per contest so far. We're going to start to see what they're really made of as the season goes on. Weren't all that great again against Florida State, Nick, though. But that certainly is there with this improved passing attack. What Daniels can do with his legs. If he can, find at least 50 to 60 yards per contest, especially in this one, they're going to be tough to keep off the field.
This is a very good rushing attack that has a nice balance here. Logan Diggs has come over and has been a fantastic add for them. He's been phenomenal so far, 253 yards on the ground, 6.7 yards per carry, 1 score. Caleb Jackson has nearly 100 yards rushing, 2 scores. Josh Williams, has 145 yards, 9.7 yards per carry, and 1 score. Noah Kane has 2 scores as well. So they're able to balance it out and spread it out. This is a very deep running back room. We discussed this in the offseason, saying that this is a very deep running back room that had potential to be involved and good balance. They have 191 yards per game on the ground, 338 through the air, 530 yards of total offense per game. This is a very high-flying, dynamic offense that puts up points. They look good so far, and they're playing against an Ole Miss defense that isn't really that great, to be honest with you. So they have a really good opportunity to put up a ton of points and make this a shootout.
Looking at the Ole Miss offense, this is a unit that's just not been very consistent. It's very upsetting to see. I don't know what's going on with Lane Kiffin in this group. It all starts with running the football. That's what they want to do, this style of offense. That's what allows them to open up the playbook. Had 299 rushing against Georgia Tech. That allowed them to have 251 through the air. That is the balance they want. That allows them to have 10 yards per play like they did against the Yellow Jackets. Couldn't run the ball against Tulane or Alabama, less than 90 yards in both of those games. And the offense ended up suffering. They want to move fast, and it's going to start with that ground attack led by Quinshon Judkins, who was phenomenal. Was great vision, very tough runner. 201 and 4 touchdowns this year, under 4 yards per carry. They're trying to get him going, Nick. It is just not working. Jackson Dart is the leading rusher right now with 219 and 3 touchdowns. That draw and a beautiful play call was the only touchdown for them against Alabama. The consistency here just makes no sense. The first drive against Tulane, they went downfield in 3 plays. Jackson Dart was on fire, complete money dots against the Green Wave. After that, though, they were stagnant the rest of the first half, really. I just don't know what's going on with this Ole Miss offense, Nick, because they have the talent. Guys like Trey Harris, Zakaria Franklin is now back. Judkins, obviously one of the nation's top running backs. Dayton Wade has great speed. Jordan Watkins has been big for them this year, but they just don't seem to be very good, especially against these tougher opponents for some reason.
I agree. This is something that's really been plaguing this offense. It's an offense that's very talented normally. Lane Kiffin obviously is an offensive guru, but they've struggled to really figure out what the true balance is this year. Jackson Dart has not looked terrible so far this year, but he hasn't really looked fantastic either. We really thought Dart was going to step up and be that guy this year. Nearly 1,100 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 63.1% completion percentage. Obviously, he's got the legs as well. He has 219 yards on the ground, plus 3 scores, 5 yards per carry. He had the 1 score against Alabama, was their only offensive touchdown. Quinson Judkins has not been his usual self. 200 yards on the ground, 3.5 yards per carry, 4 scores. ULC's Bentley has not been unleashed yet either. He has 91 yards on the ground, 6.1 yards per carry, 1 score. This offense, they live and die by the balance, right? They have that great balance on the ground, which really kind of bails them out and puts them in a good position. But 470 yards total offense, 146 on the ground, 323 through the air so far. These are numbers that are too low for Ole Miss. You expect them to be putting up a ton of points. This offense under Lane Kiffin is supposed to be dynamic, unique, and they've kind of just been stagnant and really not producing when they needed to be. It's very disappointing if you're an Ole Miss fan because they have not been able to produce like they normally do. I don't know if Dart's the problem, if the wide receiving room's the problem, or the running back room's the problem, but something's clearly the problem here. It's not working out great for this team.
I can tell you the offensive line is a big problem. They've have 10 sacks this year. It's 90th in college football. And even, at times those schools like this type of these offensive systems, even with poor offensive lines, you can still execute and put up numbers. And I know last year, Dart in this passing attack, they really struggled to get the ball downfield with good pace over the linebackers' heads, and they were able to run the ball very well last season. That's not going to be evident one bit this year because they're not being able to run the ball. Guys like Caleb Warren, Micah Pettis, Jeremy James, they're just not playing great up front. And I really thought this offensive line, with all this experience coming back, would be much better than they have been. They were able to salvage 37 against Tulane. I know they had a late backdoor cover on that one with a defensive score, I believe. They had a handful of big plays that really helped them. I mean, it's just pick and choose the big plays really for Ole Miss, and that's how they score. They're not really putting together consistent drives one bit. And, again, it's very disappointing starting with their offensive line, Nick. But again, even with offensive line being below average, you can still execute and put up points, and they're just not doing it.
I agree. I think this is something that's disappointing for this team. The offensive line has been poor. They've really been not their usual self. Like I said, you expect Kiffin to put up a ton of points and find a way, but so far this season, they only scored 37 against Tulane, 48 against Georgia Tech, and then 10 against Alabama. Obviously, 48 is not that too low of a number, but you're playing a team like Georgia Tech, you should certainly be blowing them out. Same thing with Tulane. They should have really had a better opportunity there. They won that Tulane game late. This Ole Miss team has been disappointing. There was high expectations in Oxford for this offense. Jackson Dart has not taken that leap forward that he needed to, and it's been really disappointing for this offense.
They do have an opportunity against the LSU secondary. It's been flat out poor for them. You've seen that against Florida State. That got exposed once again against Arkansas as a team they really shouldn't have allowed to throw over them like they were doing. It's just been very interesting for LSU this year. I definitely think, some of these transfers showing up and arriving have certainly not been great for them. This hasn't exactly been a group that they've recruited very heavy either, but, some new guys like Zy Alexander, Denver Harris, not exactly stepping up by any means. But the good news for them is this defensive line going against an O-line that has struggled this year. One of the nation's best units, I would say, and they've continued to prove that. I think they played very good ball against Florida State, able to get some very good penetration there. Harold Perkins, though he's been pretty quiet in his linebacking spot this year, still leads the team with 3.5 TFL. But in front of him, Mekhi Wingo, Jordan Jefferson, Savion Jones, Braden Swinson. I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches here. Mason Smith's getting more condition on a weekly basis. Great defensive line here. You look for a game, this is a 2.5-point line. You look for advantages in this game. And this is going to be one that I'm circling, Nick. This D-line against the Rebel offensive front. I think they have a chance to completely dominate here in this contest.
I think this is certainly an opportunity where they can get after the quarterback and make Jackson Dart uncomfortable and absolutely dominate in the trenches. They've been really good so far. This D-line is a very talented unit for LSU. One of the nation's best. We highlighted them in the preseason. We said that this is a team that has a good, deep defensive line that can get after the quarterback. I think they're in a good spot here against a very weak offensive line for Ole Miss. I like to see these guys get in there in the trenches and absolute dominate. I think there are some seriously talented numbers for them so far. I like what I've seen. I think this is a very good unit that's hard hitting. They get after the quarterback. They make the quarterback uncomfortable. They did find some success, limited success, albeit against Florida State. In their other games, they've had success. They got after Will Rogers in the Mississippi State game. Savion Jones, Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo have all been really good so far. Wingo, of course, 14 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Good numbers for him. I think he's been a big piece for this so far. Savion Jones, 9 tackles. He's really looking to break out still. This is a good unit that's got physical players that get after the quarterback.
Yeah, the pass rush first 2 weeks didn't really show up. The last 2 games, though, 4 sacks each against SEC West opponents. They've really came in the conference play looking for an edge here. And, the linebackers are just as good. You allude to Perkins, who's great, and a bit of a spiral. And I think they'll still look to do that with him here, trying to track down Dart, who's obviously QB designed runs from the shotgun are a big part of that offense. Whit Weeks has stepped up for them at linebacker. Greg Penn's been great. This is a team that's certainly very deep. Omar Spates, I don't exactly know what his injury status is, but they're deep here. They can certainly execute on this side of the ball. They haven't exactly been elite against the run, but they haven't been bad either. They gave up 137 last week on a lot of touches, 529 yards on the year. So it's been a very sound unit. Looking to see them dominate in the trenches, though. Back to the secondary, though, Nick, this has certainly been a struggle point for this football team, and I think it's certainly an area where they can get exposed. Major Burns is the leading tackler, former high-end recruit, getting on the field a good bit, but this year. But outside of corner, they're not very good. That's something Ole Miss is going to look to attack. Zakaria Franklin coming back, he can really look to dominate these guys. They have plenty of speed, too. They can really stretch the field. So, again, we're going to focus on matchups. Well, here's one right here. If you're going to dominate it up front, Ole Miss will have an opportunity to shoot downfield if the protection can hold up just enough. But where do you think the edge lies in this one? Do you think LSU is going to get burned up all game, or is the pass rush just going to be too much?
I think LSU is going to get an opportunity to put the pass rush on them and prevent those deep burns downfield in the secondary. Major Burns been their, like you said, top tackler, 27 total tackles. Outside of him, though, the secondary looked poor. They really have not stepped up where they wanted to. The linebacking core has been fine, like you said. I think that they put Harold Perkins in coverage. I don't know if that's entirely still the best idea. Perkins, though, has been a great player despite that liability in coverage. 16 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him, 3 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles. He's your best player at linebacker for a reason. Andre Sam has not been fantastic. It's free safety. Denver Harris has not really lived up to the expectations so far. These guys need to step up. Sam has 21 total tackles, but he's been a bit of a liability in coverage so far at times. So they really need to find a way to step up. Denver Harris has just not been great. 6 total tackles for him. Not too great in coverage either. That is the one key thing here is, can Ole Miss pick apart this secondary and have a chance? Can the offensive line hold up enough to give Dart a chance to find crossing routes across the middle and pick apart this secondary? That's the big weakness here for Ole Miss, or LSU, is the secondary. What can they do in the situation? But I think they're going to be bailed out just fine by their stellar defensive line to make it a non-issue.
Looking at the Ole Miss defense, this is going to be a great prove-it game for them. And I feel like they could have had that chance against Alabama if they were able to manufacture some offense. I still think this is a pretty talented defense. I think it's one of the better ones under, Lane Kiffin. Now with Pete Golding calling the plays, only 356 allowed against Bama. The physical run game, though, they only had put up 131 yards, but it was pretty evident they were getting beat up. Jalen Milroe obviously made some mistakes, which lowered that number. They just played a quarterback, though, Nick, that's dual threat and can take you downfield and has some speed. Milroe, obviously, a much faster guy, so they certainly have that tape from last week they can lean on. I think that's certainly important for them moving forward. This is a defensive line that certainly is going to have to step up. Jared Ivey, Isaac Ogwu, he's been good. The James Madison transfer, Kari Coleman at his linebacking spot, J.J. Pegues, Xavier Harris, a big name that's really stepped up for them, 6'7", 335. They have size there. And, this is a D-line I think is capable of a lot this season, Nick. They have veterans at linebacker as well. Monty Montgomery, Cedric Johnson, another one of those defensive ends. They have plenty of leadership and playmaking here. Will it be enough, though? They also have a freshman, Satarian Perkins, at linebacker. And I think this is a pretty deep group, probably the best under Kiffin. What is Pete Golding going to dial up here?
Pete Golding has to find a way to develop a good game plan for this Ole Miss defense. They've been solid so far this season. I've actually not been totally disappointed with them. 226 yards allowed through the air, 125 allowed on the ground, 351 total. They held Tulane to 20 points, held Mercer to 7. They held Georgia Tech 23, Alabama 24, right? So this has actually been an underrated unit so far, which is not really what you see out of a Lane Kiffin defense. They're not typically that sort of powerful defense that is good right now. They held Milroe in check for a little bit early on. They got that interception in the game so far. So they have been solid. I've been pretty happy with this. Jared Ivey's been pretty good coming off the edge. I think he is one of the key players for this defense. I like what I've seen out of him. 14 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack for him. I think that's good numbers out of Ivey. J.J. Pugas as well has been pretty good so far. He's having a decent season. He's at 11 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack for him. Cedric Johnson, the nice player there. They can move him around and get him involved. He's a solid piece, 12 total tackles. So I like this unit so far. They've been good on the defensive line. They're going against a better offensive line for Ole Miss. Can they win the battle in the trenches? That's a key here.
Yeah, you look at the secondary as well. I think they're plenty capable here. DeAndre Prince, one of the better corners in this conference. John Saunders has been phenomenal for them at safety. Trey Washington's really stepped up as a tackler. Samari Walton, though, Deshaun and Gady. One of these guys on the other side is going to have to be great. Obviously, they're facing a phenomenal duo. Mainly guys that are going to attack you in the slot. They're going to move those guys all around. They've been rotating a lot here. I think this is a very talented defense all around, like you said. And they weren't really too bad against the pass against Alabama. They did give up a big play, though. That one touchdown throw they had. Georgia Tech was able to eat them up a good bit, kind of in garbage time there. But this is going to be a prove-it game for this secondary.
This is a prove-it game for the secondary. They have some nice pieces. Trey Washington at free safety is your leading tackler so far. 25 total tackles for him, 2 tackles for loss. Pretty good numbers out of him so far. DeAndre Price as well. He's been pretty solid in coverage. He has 2 pass breakups plus an interception. 14 total tackles for Prince. Sorry, not Price. He's a talented piece they have. At left cornerback, they brought some nice transfers in. John Saunders at nickelback was a player they added. He's been pretty good, 18 total tackles. He's your 5th leading tackler, 4 pass breakups, very good in coverage so far. I like this secondary. I think this is an underrated secondary that's had a pretty good season so far. They were able to keep a poor Alabama offense, passing offense that is, in check for most of the game. They got beat on a few occasions by Milroe's deep ball, but that comes with the territory. I think Milroe's a little one-dimensional with that. I like Ole Miss's secondary. This is a nice matchup against them, but they're playing against a better quarterback in Jaden Daniels, and they're playing against a better wide receiving room with Malik Neighbors being that number 1 guy for LSU, as well as them having another player in Brian Thomas Jr. I think they're going to lose that battle, and that could be certainly why they lose this game.
Yeah, I'm certainly concerned about how they will cover in the slot. Even though Deshaun Anthony this year in that position has been very sound, but been doing that consistently for 60 minutes, it's going to be something to watch. And, just play action. If the run game gets going for LSU, I think vertically, this is a team that has typically given up big chunk plays, moving vertically against the pass. But I think this Ole Miss defense, I'm excited for them. Interesting to see what happens. Looking at the team comparisons, I think LSU, they're going to get the edge across the board on the offensive side of the ball. Judkins is phenomenal, but he's been very ineffective this season. Not exactly his fault, but he certainly has not played up to his typical standard as well, where he typically, last year was just completely running people over. Going to get the edge at quarterback and wide receiver. I think it's probably maybe a deeper room for Ole Miss, but the duo they have established over in Baton Rouge is certainly much better. Zakaria Franklin has, only had 1 reception last week, finally getting on the field. So that's going to be the edge for LSU. Going to give the edge at defensive line and linebacker as well. Ole Miss, they're going to be trailing here. Only 1 advantage in that secondary we just raved about. Is it fair or is it a little too disrespectful to give Ole Miss this many disadvantages in this contest?
No, I think it's fair. I think this is a team that has disadvantage on offense, which is really not something you normally expect. You like to see Ole Miss have the advantage on offense typically. But I think Daniels is just a better quarterback than Dart. Judkins, if he's playing his full potential, he is the best running back of the 2 teams. But he has not quite hit that level yet. I don't know if he's facing an injury or something, but he's just not quite playing like he normally does. And then the wide receiver room has got to go to LSU. It's certainly got to go to LSU. The offensive line as well. They've been more physical. I think this is a very fair tale of the tape. I think this is a good balance. This is a good secondary, though, for Ole Miss. They certainly earned that point. Very talented unit there.
Looking at the final thoughts on the prediction, the keys of the game, for LSU, going on the road here, big energy. This team, Lane Kiffin, when they get the ground game going, they are tough to slow down. So that's going to be the big keys. Just dominate the trenches, at least on the defensive side of the ball. If you can slow down the run, this offense is really just not going to be clicking. They're going to be out of sync for the most part. If you are Ole Miss, you want to be able to run the ball because you like your chances against this secondary for the most part. And I think for them, they got to be good and stout in defending the slot. They got to force Jaden Daniels to stay in the pocket, if anything, where he can still be dangerous, but he's incredibly more dangerous when he's able to pick up rushing yards and, advanced drives with his legs. I'm going to take LSU. Really tough game here to predict, though, Nick, but, we sit here, we break down, we do the matchups, and I just think the ones for LSU are going to favor me in the way of the Tigers. 28-24 for me. What's your pick?
I'm going to take LSU as well. I think 38-30, a more high-scoring game. I think both offenses will be unleashed. I like the over at 66 right now. I like to see them hit that over by 2 points. I like this LSU offense. It's a fantastic offense that puts up a ton of points. I think Ole Miss will be able to hang in there with them and put up a lot of points and be able to isolate the weak spots in the secondary for LSU and find a similar success to what Florida State did against them, but I do think LSU wins this game in the long run. I think LSU is just too much talent across the board right now. Brian Kelly's team has shaken off that early loss to Florida State and has really hit the ground running here. I know it was a close game against Arkansas, but they did look good in that game. I know it was close, but Arkansas did fight through that game and scored a lot of points in the second half. I like LSU here to win this game. I think they're just a better team across the board, and it's going to be tough for Kiffin. 2 straight losses in conference play. Ole Miss had a lot of high expectations. They lose 2 in a row. That's certainly not what they want to see in Oxford. They'll be a little disappointed with that.
Yeah, that's going to be it for today's episode. I appreciate you joining me, Nick. I would consider this an SEC West eliminator.
Absolutely. I think this is, like I said in the preview or the review a couple days ago, the SEC West is wide open at this point. Any of these teams can win it. Whoever wins this game gets a big leg up on the rest of the conference.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.